This particular anime tells the story of a young man who is named Kaito. He is just a regular student who also happens to be an explorer of dungeons, though he is just a beginner. Every single time he explores a dungeon, Kaito finds he is only able to defeat slimes on the very first floor. This situation occurs because his personal level is the absolute lowest among all the other explorers. However, after successfully defeating hundreds and hundreds of slimes, Kaito suddenly and unexpectedly discovers a slime that is colored gold. From this specific slime, he manages to obtain a Valkyrie-class servant card which represents a mythological creature known as a demigoddess. As you can imagine, Kaito was extremely happy to have gotten this card. He then immediately intended to sell it with the high hope that he could get a lot of money. But when he asked about its price, he was immediately shocked to find out that the card was actually worth billions of yen. Absolutely shocked by this fantastic, unbelievable value, Kaito found himself daydreaming all the entire way home. Upon arriving at the train station, Kaito happened to run into some of his old friends. This particular meeting reminded them that a long time ago, they had formed a team to explore dungeons together. However, because of their failures in the past, two of his friends eventually decided to quit the team. When he finally got home, Kaito sat down and ate dinner with his family. Later, while taking a bath, he started thinking about the amazing possibility of becoming much stronger by using his new servant card. But then again, on the other hand, if he just sold the card and received 1 billion yen, he could probably buy all the new equipment and powerful weapons that he had always dreamed of having. The very next day, Kaito left and went to school together with Haruka. Once at school, he also met up with Shinji and Hayato, who were his other classmates. After school let out, he returned to explore the dungeon, this time with the hope of obtaining some kind of great power. This time, Kaito decided he would finally use his servant card. From out of that card, there emerged the figure of a small girl in a crimson robe who introduced herself to him as Sylvie. Because she had been summoned, Sylvie now regarded Kaito as her new master. At first, Kaito felt hopeless because Sylvie's appearance was not very convincing at all. He thought he had completely lost his chance to get those billions of yen. However, he still invited Sylvie to go hunt slimes together with him. Not long after they started walking, Sylvie immediately sensed the presence of slimes somewhere around them. She quickly pointed out the exact direction and location of those slimes. When a slime was finally found, Kaito asked her to please defeat the monster. Sylvie accepted his command and instantly destroyed that slime with a very powerful divine lightning attack. Even though she looked just like a little child, Kaito began to realize that Sylvie truly was a powerful demigoddess entity. A short time later, Sylvie complained that she was feeling hungry. However, the food she needed wasn't ordinary food at all, but rather magic cores, which are energy crystals dropped by monsters that have been defeated. Kaito quickly gave her the magic cores he had obtained, and Sylvie immediately felt full and was ready to continue their hunt. But because Sylvie always felt hungry every time she attacked, Kaito finally decided on a brand new strategy. He himself would be the one to defeat the slime. Meanwhile, Sylvie would be in charge of detecting the monster's exact location. With that new strategy, they could efficiently collect a very large number of magic cores together. Accompanied by Sylvie, Kaito decided to explore the second floor of the dungeon. The menacing atmosphere in that new place made Kaito tremble with a great deal of fear. Luckily, Sylvie was right there beside him. She immediately calmed him down by gently holding his hand. Not long after that, Sylvie sensed the presence of goblins up ahead of them. Knowing this, Kaito instantly fell back, completely terrified of facing such a monster. However, after remembering his dream of becoming a great explorer, he gathered his courage to fight that goblin. They then discovered a single goblin that was fast asleep. Sylvie could have easily defeated the monster with her lightning magic, but Kaito stopped her from doing so. He wanted to defeat that goblin using his very own abilities. Armed only with a wooden sword, Kaito tried to attack the goblin. Unfortunately, his attack missed completely and gave the goblin a chance to fight back. Luckily, Kaito had brought some bug spray. He managed to blind the goblin's vision with that spray and immediately attacked it until the goblin was finally defeated. This important victory cost Kaito to gain one full level. Even though it was only a single level, it made him very happy, because defeating slimes usually didn't give nearly that much experience. In addition to that, he also acquired a new skill that increased all his stats whenever he was fighting against goblins. After checking all of his stats, Kaito continued fighting against the other goblins. Occasionally, Sylvie also helped by directly defeating a goblin whenever Kaito was starting to get overwhelmed. Thanks to all their hard work, Kaito managed to collect many magic cores. However, the very next day, Kaito's body ached all over. On the way to school, Haruka became suspicious that Kaito had been entering the dungeon again. Kaito immediately denied it as he didn't want to make his friend worry about him. After several more trips exploring the second floor, Kaito finally had enough money to buy a tungsten rod. In addition to that, Sylvie also gave him a divine blessing, which made Kaito's power increase even more. As they explored deeper into the dungeon, they encountered a glowing skeleton. Kaito quickly asked for Sylvie's help to defeat it using her magic. After it was defeated, the monster dropped a red magic core. Unfortunately, Kaito didn't realize how rare that item was. Without thinking twice, he immediately gave it over to Sylvie. Only after doing that did he find out that the red magic core was worth over 2 million yen, and he deeply regretted giving it away so carelessly. The next day, Kaito asked Sylvie not to join the fight because he wanted to try exploring the dungeon all by himself. In his opinion, this was very important so that he wouldn't become completely dependent on Sylvie. He managed to get through the challenge on his own, but he had to use many more healing potions because he received injuries all over his body. While he was hunting slimes, Sylvie suddenly sensed something strange. It turned out that feeling was coming from a silver slime, one of the unique slime types that drops a demon-class servant card called Piscon. That servant was named Luaria. Kaito decided to use the card. From inside the card emerged a tiny demon figure who looked to be the same age as Sylvie. Because of her cold and harsh nature, Sylvie initially felt uncomfortable with Luaria's presence. However, over time, she started to like Luaria, realizing that the little demon didn't mean any harm. Behind her unfriendly attitude, Luaria possessed a terrifying power, capable of annihilating enemies in an instant. Despite that, she was also extremely greedy. She always wanted to eat magic cores in very large quantities. The next day, Kaito, along with his two servants, explored the third floor of the dungeon. This time, he came with much better equipment and weapons than he had before. On the third floor, they were immediately confronted by two hound monsters, but Luaria managed to defeat them both with just a single attack. After the fight, Luaria immediately demanded a large reward. This, of course, made Kaito feel overwhelmed. Next, they faced off against a wild boar. Kaito managed to knock the monster back, but since it was still moving, he had to shoot it one more time to finally defeat it. From this battle, Kaito managed to reach level 11. However, most of the magic cores they collected were eaten by Luaria. At school, Kaito was asked by his friends about his plans for continuing his education. At first, he hadn't really thought much about it, but after finding out that Haruka intended to apply to a specific school, Kaito decided to apply to the exact same school. As time went on, Kaito began to feel that something was strange about Sylvie's attitude. During their dungeon explorations, Sylvie seemed to be keeping her distance as if she was avoiding him. To find out the reason for this behavior, Kaito went and directly asked Sylvie for her reasoning. Sylvie then admitted to him that she was feeling uncomfortable. This was because Kaito had only been acting nice to Luaria recently. Luaria was getting far more magic cores and much more attention from him, but before, Sylvie had been able to be much closer to him. Realizing this, Kaito decided to be much more fair. He started giving equal attention to both of them. After the atmosphere improved between them, they resumed their dungeon exploration. Thanks to their solid teamwork, they managed to defeat enemy after enemy without getting injured. However, after fighting for quite a while, Sylvie started to whine, asking for food. She complained she was still hungry and asked for even more magic cores. Kaito didn't realize that as the servants' levels increased, their appetite for magic cores also increased. As a result, the supply of magic cores that Kaito had brought shrank drastically. Even so, he didn't give up exploring the dungeon. In order to get more magic cores, Kaito chose to fight by himself. Meanwhile, his two servants were tasked with helping to detect or support him from the back lines. On another occasion, Kaito found a magic orb inside the dungeon. This item gave him the ability to use magic with the water attribute. Unfortunately, the magic power he possessed was still very weak and was not capable of dealing any significant damage to his enemies. Kaito really wanted to use his magic ability to attack. Because of this, he began to practice using his water magic skills. Unfortunately, after just a few attempts, he immediately ran out of energy and couldn't cast any more magic. Even so, Kaito did not give up. The very next day, he trained again and finally succeeded in controlling his magic much more freely. However, because this training drained so much of his energy, he became exhausted and couldn't focus while studying in his classes. Seeing Kaito looking so very tired, Haruka started to suspect that he was secretly training to exploit dungeons. Kaito quickly made up an excuse and said that he was just tired from participating in dance practice. Over time, Kaito found a much more effective way to use his water magic. Instead of attacking directly, he chose to clog the enemy's respiratory tract using water so that they would slowly die from lack of breath. At the same time, Kaito realized that he was no longer gaining any XP from the monsters on the 3rd floor. Therefore, he began to consider moving on to the 4th floor. Not long after that, they entered the 4th floor. As soon as they arrived, they were immediately greeted by giant cockroach monsters. Sylvie and Lueria, who absolutely hated cockroaches, immediately finished them off with a combined magical attack. After all the monsters were defeated, Kaito began to collect the magic stones they dropped. This time, he managed to gather quite a lot. The reason was because Sylvie and Lueria had no intention of eating them. Next, they faced 2 powerful monsters, a sand golem and also a mud golem. Both of these monsters were immune to physical attacks, so Kaito needed Lueria's magic to help defeat them. While exploring deeper, Sylvie felt something strange behind a large boulder. Out of curiosity, she destroyed the boulder and found a secret passage leading to a hidden room. Inside, they didn't find any monsters, but instead found many traps, so they had to proceed with extreme caution. After traversing a very long corridor, they arrived in another room. In there, they found a giant slime and also an ogre monster. Sylvie and Lueria immediately launched a surprise magic attack, but it turned out their attacks had no effect. Both monsters were still alive and completely unharmed. The ogre then leaped and launched a counterattack. Fortunately, Sylvie's protective magic was still active, so the attack didn't harm anyone. Because magic was proving ineffective, Kaito tried using his gun instead. As it turned out, each shot managed to wound the ogre quite effectively. However, because his ammunition was limited, Kaito couldn't keep relying on the weapon. He switched to using his crossbow and finally managed to defeat the ogre. Meanwhile, the giant slime turned out to be weak against bug spray. Kaito just needed to spray the liquid while Sylvie helped him with her defensive skills. From this fight, Kaito obtained a red magic core, a special core that could be sold for a very high price. On a different day, Kaito was invited to join a party consisting of 3 girls. They were planning to explore the dungeon and participate in an event that was currently happening there. Near the teleportation gate, there was a mini market, so before heading down to the lower floors, they could buy various supplies. Kaito carried a lot of supplies inside his backpack. Meanwhile, his 3 new companions seemed to carry only a few items because they were using magic bags. After their preparations were complete, they began to enter the 7th floor. Upon arriving there, they didn't find any monsters, but instead met a guard who was on duty. Since there was no immediate threat, Kaito idly asked about his teammates' levels. Airi was at level 18, while Hikari and Miku were at level 15. However, even though their levels were the same, Hikari had significantly more MP than the others. Not long after that, they encountered a stone golem. Airi faced the monster all by herself. As the one with the highest level, she was indeed able to defeat it easily. However, when they faced a bronze golem, it was Hikari and Miku's turn to act. They both launched a combined attack to throw the golem off balance. After it was sufficiently weakened, Airi launched the final attack and managed to defeat it. However, before they could even rest, an iron golem appeared from behind them. This monster was far too strong to fight. Even Airi was unable to damage it. At this critical moment, Kaito revealed his true ability. He used the magic sword Balzard, a rare weapon that could inflict damage according to the user's imagination. Kaito thrust his sword towards the golem, and just as he imagined, the golem shattered instantly. This action left Airi and the others thoroughly impressed. They felt much safer being with Kaito. Because of this, they invited him again to explore the dungeon towards the second gate, which was located on the 11th floor. However, Kaito couldn't immediately accept that invitation because he already had permanent companions. He felt he had to ask for permission from his servants first. Unfortunately, Sylvie and Luheria did not give him permission. They forbade Kaito from joining another party because the 3 of them were already enough to continue exploring just as they normally did. Sometime later, Kaito was asked out by Haruka. They planned to go shopping together on the weekend. Kaito's friends called this a date, but Kaito rejected that idea and considered it just a normal shopping trip. When the weekend arrived, Kaito and Haruka went out together. After not seeing each other for so long, they spent time together, reminiscing about the old days when they often went to various places with Haruka's father. This time, Kaito accompanied Haruka to buy clothes. Then they continued their walk to the park and played around the lake. Seeing Haruka up close made Kaito keep thinking about how beautiful she was. However, he couldn't express his feelings just yet because he currently had other, more important priorities to focus on. By utilizing his ice attribute ring, Kaito created a new magic technique which he called the Magic Ice Sword. After he tried out this technique, Sylvie and Luheria once again brought up the topic of the party that was mentioned before. Luheria firmly forbade Kaito from joining that party. Her reason was that Kaito might not give them any more magic cores. On the contrary, Sylvie actually suggested Kaito join the party and stated that she would support whatever decision he made. That night, Kaito planned to call Eri to talk about the party. However, because he was so nervous, he asked Haruka for advice on how to overcome his anxiety. Haruka offered him some advice based on her own experiences. Thanks to that, Kaito gained the confidence to contact Eri. In their conversation, Kaito explained that he could only join them on the weekends. Eri didn't mind that at all. She also usually went to the dungeon on weekends due to other commitments on weekdays. A few days later, Kaito officially joined their party. This time, he took on the role of a leader, not only fighting but also giving directions to the other members. Thanks to their good teamwork, they managed to defeat one monster after another very quickly. Eri realized that Kaito's leadership was excellent, not at all like someone who was used to fighting alone. The next day, they began their exploration towards the 8th floor. To anticipate any unforeseen events, Kaito bought various supplies including flotation devices and a new magic core weapon. After arriving on the 8th floor, they were immediately attacked by a water monster. The attack made Kaito panic, whereas the other party members remained calm and were able to defeat the monster with focus. A few moments later, they were confronted by a dinosaur. At first, they tried to run away, but their path was blocked by the creature, forcing them to stand and fight. Miku was assigned to attack from a long distance. Hikari used her magic to restrain the enemy's movements. Meanwhile, Kaito and Eri attacked directly from the front. Kaito's sword strike successfully crippled the dinosaur, and Eri used that opportunity to stab the monster's head from close range. However, despite taking a fatal blow, the dinosaur could still move. In a desperate situation, Kaito finally brought out his servant cards and summoned both Sylvie and Luheria. In an instant, the two of them managed to defeat the dinosaur with their overwhelming magical power. After the battle was over, Miku as Hikari thanked Kaito's servants. They were captivated by Sylvie and Luheria's cute and charming appearances. After the exploration was finished, they planned to relax at the bathhouse and end the day by resting together. The next day, Kaito and Haruka went to attend an open campus event. Haruka was very happy because she could go with him. However, unbeknownst to them, it turned out Kaito's friends were also secretly attending the same event. Before long, they arrived at Aka Academy. Upon arrival, they were immediately greeted by the receptionist, who was none other than Eri. Seeing Kaito acting so familiar with Eri made Haruka and his friends a little surprised. Unfortunately, Kaito couldn't explain their relationship because he had promised Haruka not to discuss anything related to the dungeon. But because his friends were too curious, Kaito accidentally let it slip. This caused Haruka's expression to turn cynical. Kaito quickly explained that Eri was the one who told him about this open campus event. But that explanation didn't improve her mood, and Haruka just got more annoyed. To prevent an argument, Shinji and Hayato quickly pulled Kaito away and tried to defuse the situation there. After things calmed down, they looked at the very diverse list of student clubs. The impressive campus facilities amazed them, even though they had only seen a small part of it. While resting in the garden, Hikari and Miku suddenly came over to greet Kaito. At first, Haruka stared at them coldly, but she tried to be friendly after Kaito introduced the two girls. However, as soon as she learned they knew each other from dungeon exploration, Haruka's expression changed back to being displeased. Not long after, Eri invited everyone to eat lunch in the cafeteria. Because the cafeteria was owned by the school, they all received a discount, even though they had ordered quite a lot of food. After eating, Kaito and Haruka went to get drinks. Meanwhile, Shinji and Hayato tried to get to know Hikari and Miku better by talking about their experiences. Because they had similar interests, the atmosphere quickly warmed up and they became friends. A few moments later, Kaito and Haruka returned with the drinks. However, the previously lively atmosphere immediately fell silent. Haruka seemed unhappy because the conversation was still about dungeons. Even so, she kept listening, although she wondered why everyone was so interested in entering dungeons. After that, Kaito and Haruka got some time alone. They talked about various interesting things regarding university life. At this campus, every student could use the heated swimming pool, which made it possible to swim even during the cold winter. After visiting the pool, they saw the soccer field located on the building's roof. As they were walking down the stairs, an incident suddenly occurred, where Hikari slipped and fell. Fortunately, Kaito acted quickly and managed to catch her just in time. Because of that, Hikari was saved without any injury. As evening approached, Eiri invited everyone to the dojo. There, she demonstrated the martial arts techniques she had been practicing. After that session was over, they all exchanged contact information and wrapped up the open campus event for the day. A day later, Kaito resumed his dungeon exploration. Feeling abandoned by their master, Sylvie and Lueria filed a protest and demanded compensation in the form of 100 magic cores. Not long after that, Kaito found another rare slime. Lueria quickly defeated it and the slime dropped an item in the shape of a glove. Kaito decided to test the glove on the 9th floor. When tried, the glove could be used to launch powerful invisible attacks. At the same time, Eiri and her companions arrived and joined up with Kaito to continue exploring the 9th floor. Seeing Kaito's closeness with the other girls made Sylvie and Lueria quite upset. However, Eiri and her friends actually found their reactions to be both funny and adorable. After all the members had gathered, they advanced together onto the 9th floor. Upon arriving, they were immediately confronted by a powerful monster known as an Orthos. Realizing they couldn't win easily, Kaito told the others to retreat. However, before they could escape, the monster had already discovered their location. Sylvie immediately activated her protection magic, while Lueria launched fire magic to burn the monster. The other members helped with long-range attacks, but all of these attacks proved to be ineffective. They had to work together more closely and unleash all their strength. After a series of coordinated, continuous attacks, the Orthos was finally defeated. However, not long after the Orthos fell, Sylvie sensed a strong aura of another enemy nearby. It turned out the aura was coming from a demon that was rising up from the floor below. This demon was much stronger than the Orthos. Besides being intelligent, the demon possessed magic, great sword skills, and defenses that were difficult to penetrate. Kaito and his team had a very hard time in this battle. Fortunately, Kaito still had one ultimate skill left, an ability that could increase power by exchanging life points as a cost. When this skill was activated, Lueria transformed into her adult form. In this form, she was able to unleash an incredible attack that instantly defeated the demon in a single slash. However, because the skill's side effect was so risky, Kaito couldn't let it stay active as it could drain his own life away. After successfully defeating the demon, Kaito and his teammates all gained a level. According to Kaito, this was to be expected, considering they had just risked their lives in that battle. When checking the dropped items, Kaito found a green crystal and a servant card belonging to the demon they had just defeated. Lueria identified the demon as a low-ranking demon. Because of that, she suggested that the card should just be sold. But out of curiosity, Kaito decided to try the card anyway. Unfortunately, the result was not satisfactory. It turned out the servant he got was just a very low-level demon. Despite his regret, Kaito still felt lucky because the Orthos' core could be sold for a very high price. The demon who became Kaito's new servant was named Bia. To find out how strong she was, Kaito asked her to demonstrate her abilities. Unfortunately, Bia couldn't show her full potential. The reason was because her weapon had been damaged. As an alternative, Kaito gave her a tungsten rod to use as a weapon. However, that weapon was not suitable for Bia. Besides making her movement slow, her power was also drastically reduced because her level had reset to level 1. Even so, Kaito didn't mind too much. He still considered Bia to be quite strong, as she was able to defeat several monsters even in her suboptimal condition. In addition to that, Bia also had a skill that could be used to heal her comrades' wounds. After that, Eiri and Hikari tried to launch a combined attack. Hikari used ice magic to stop the monster's movement, then Eiri slashed it with her spear. Miku also showed her ability by using illusion magic, which allowed her to control the enemy to make the attack easier.
A few moments later, a horde of monsters approached. Sylvie immediately activated her support skill to increase her friend's attack power. Unfortunately, the effect of the skill couldn't be felt by Bia, which made her feel sad and also useless. To cheer up the saddened Bia, Kaito bought her a brand new sword. At first, Bia didn't show any reaction, making Kaito's friends think that she didn't like her sword, but it turned out Bia absolutely loved the new sword. She was just silent because she was so moved. After receiving her new sword, Bia once again showed her fighting prowess. Now her strength had increased drastically, and she easily defeated all the monsters that were surrounding her. The next day, Kaito and his friends went to hang out at Eii's house. It turned out Ei came from a prestigious family and lived in a house with an incredibly vast estate. Initially, they came there with the intention of studying together, but because the atmosphere was too awkward, Ei invited everyone to relax by the waterfall. The girls were able to enjoy this activity leisurely, while the boys seemed to struggle with the coldness of the water. Despite this, they all enjoyed their time together at Eii's house until the evening. The next day, Kaito and his party members resumed their dungeon exploration. Now, their spirits were soaring after having enjoyed such a wonderful day. However, just as everyone was about to go home, an unexpected incident occurred. Hikari suddenly fainted right inside the dungeon.
2 years ago, Miku was known as a great card player. She was nicknamed the Queen because she always won every single game. But behind all that, Miku felt her life was boring. Then, just as she began to think her life was no longer fun, a girl named Hikari came and challenged her to a game. However, Hikari was suffering from a rare disease. Seeing Hikari's worrying condition made Miku feel concerned, and she couldn't bear to leave her alone. Not long after, both of Hikari's parents came to visit. Feeling guilty, Miku immediately apologized to them. However, Hikari's parents didn't blame her. On the contrary, they thanked her because Miku and her friends had taken the time to accompany Hikari. Unable to hold back her sadness, Miku left the room and reminisced about the first time she met Hikari. At that time, Hikari had intentionally used the same card deck as her because she admired Miku so much. From that day on, they often spent time together. Hikari's presence made Miku's days feel much more colorful. However, one day, Miku was in an accident and had to be hospitalized. It was there she learned that Hikari had a rare disease for which there was no cure. Despite this, Miku did not give up. She was determined to find the legendary elixir, a miracle cure believed to be able to heal any disease. It was said that this elixir was hidden deep inside the dungeon. When Miku told Hikari about her intention, Hikari fully supported her. She also wanted to search for the elixir, not just for herself, but also to help other people. Finally, they decided to explore the dungeon together. Miku then told everything to Hikari's father. The father was deeply moved and very grateful that his daughter had a friend like Miku. After that, Miku declared that she would do whatever she could, just like Hikari, who wanted to become a hero for sick people. Miku also apologized to Ei for hiding Hikari's condition all this time. Ei didn't mind and even offered to help search for the elixir. Although the truth about the elixir was still uncertain, Ei was willing to help because Hikari believed that the cure really did exist. Kaito also joined in on the search. He believed the elixir was located on a much deeper floor of the dungeon. The next day, they began exploring the 10th floor. There, they were immediately confronted by a camel-shaped monster. Kaito ordered the party members to split up and fight the monster. However, after the monster was defeated, a giant worm monster suddenly appeared and immediately coiled around Kaito. Fortunately, Bia moved quickly and managed to save him. Lately, Kaito had been pushing himself way too hard. He looked extremely tired and had difficulty focusing on his studies. He was so tired, in fact, that he even fell asleep in class and didn't wake up until the class was over. After school, his friends planned to visit Hikari in the hospital. However, Kaito chose not to go along and decided to enter the dungeon again instead. Meanwhile, Haruka also didn't go for the visit and just sent a fruit basket via Hayato. The visit from her friends made Hikari very happy. She was able to spend her free time playing cards with them. But behind her happiness, Hikari felt sad because Haruka had not come to visit her even once. She began to think that perhaps Haruka had some connection to Captain Kasuragi, a famous dungeon expedition hero who was still declared missing on the 41st floor. From the information she gathered, Hikari suspected that the reason Haruka disliked dungeons might be because of her connection to the captain.
Even so, Hikari remained optimistic. She was determined to get better and conquer the 41st floor so that one day she could explore the dungeon together with Haruka. Meanwhile, Kaito, Eri, and Miku were facing a powerful monster deep inside the dungeon. As Eri and Miku launched attacks to divert the monster's attention, Kaito secretly moved forward and managed to stab the enemy until it fell. Although they had been exploring the dungeon for a long time, finding the elixir was not as easy as they had imagined. They would have to go into much deeper areas and fight monsters that were far stronger. Despite this, their income as explorers increased drastically. Kaito's daily earnings with his party now reached millions of yen. After receiving their payment, they parted ways at the train station. Upon arriving home, Kaito watched a movie about a brother and sister who explore a dungeon. The movie inspired Kaito to dig up more information about the monsters that inhabit the upcoming floors. After school, Kaito, along with his servants, entered the dungeon again. This time, they arrived in a frozen region inhabited by a horde of boar monsters. However, their numbers were much larger than anticipated. Kaito was forced to fall back in order to avoid the stampede. As the distance between them and the monsters closed, Lueria unleashed a massive explosion to wipe out the entire horde. Kaito and Bia continued to fight on the front lines, while Sylvie supported them with enhancement magic. But because the number of enemies was too large, Kaito was eventually overwhelmed and fell in critical condition. Fortunately, his servants were still able to fight well. They managed to save Kaito and restore him from that dangerous condition. After experiencing that incident, Kaito finally realized that all this time, Haruka had been feeling afraid and worried about his safety. Even so, Kaito stated that he wanted to accomplish the things that Captain Kasuragi couldn't in order to uncover the dungeon's mysteries and become a true hero. Kaito's words reminded Haruka of her father's advice from the past. A long time ago, her father had said that the true meaning of a hero is someone who is willing to protect and sacrifice himself for other people. That is why, in Haruka's eyes, Kaito was already worthy of being called a hero. Because of that, she gave Kaito her full support to continue the expedition in order to save Hikari. The very next day, Kaito gathered with his party members. After thinking about various possibilities, he concluded that farming slimes was the fastest way to obtain the elixir. He proposed this plan to his friends. Because rare items are usually found on the lower floors of the dungeon, Miku was initially uninterested in the idea. However, remembering that Kaito had managed to get Sylvie and Lueria on the first floor, Eri judged that the method was worth trying. Sylvie also agreed with the idea, saying that their meeting was not a coincidence, but rather destiny meant to achieve the same goal. In the end, all the party members agreed. Even Shinji and Hayato joined in to help them exterminate the slimes. One by one, they defeated the slimes. But just as expected, the ordinary slimes did not drop any rare items. As the team's spirit began to wane, Hayato tried to lighten the mood by reminding them that it was Christmas Eve. He hoped that maybe Santa Claus would gift them the elixir on this very night. A few moments later, Kaito found a rainbow slime, a rare species that was much faster and harder to defeat than ordinary slimes. But after ganging up on it together, they finally managed to defeat it.
After that, Kaito and Miku brought Hikari into the dungeon. There, Hikari was given the servant card Titania, a healing fairy who was said to have the ability to cure any disease. Hikari then used the card. Titania appeared in the form of a beautiful, winged fairy who brought a healing light. However, because Titania was still at level 1, she was not yet able to heal Hikari completely. Even so, the healing process could still be done gradually. When they tried it for the first time, the result was truly beyond expectations. Titania's healing spell successfully removed the pain that Hikari had been feeling. It even allowed her to resume her normal activities once again, just like before.